Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to One on One. I'm Nirad Tiwari. Tonight I'm joined by the Archbishop of Port of Spain, Edward Gilbert. Welcome, Archbishop.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Now, this must be a unique, well, it is a unique time, but it must be also a conflicting time for you in that...
Yes, it is. It's conflicting in the sense that that because I had such a deep affection for the Holy Father, and you lose him and you lose that, and yet the machinery of the Church has to go on and begin again, and that's exactly what it's doing. And today, in the Archdiocese, this is the middle of the 5-day mourning period I declared for the Archdiocese of Port of Spain. The Mass tonight in the Cathedral will be the National Mass for the Catholic community and its guests. So that would include the President, the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice, the Leader of the Opposition, the Diplomatic Corps, Parliament, Cabinet. And because I want our people to be able to participate, we cleared out the forecourt of the Cathedral.
Sure.
Additional chairs will be put out there with tents and large TV screens. Additional chairs were put into the Cathedral, because I understand that the government of the nation and the diplomatic corps have to be part of this, but I'm also sensitive to the needs of the people who should be able to get into something like this and celebrate it.
Now, it's an interesting sentiment, because the big debate about the successor is whether or not he will come from the developing world.
Yeah.
And we're hearing, even here, the papal nuncio here said, yes, it's quite possible it might even come from the Caribbean or Central America, Caribbean being Spanish-speaking Caribbean.
I think that's true, and I think that the Holy Father coming from Poland, having done as an extraordinary job as he did, that opened the door that no one nation can claim the papacy anymore. I mean, not that they did that with any arrogance, it was just the tradition. It was in Italy, all the departments speak Italian, and therefore it should be in Italian. And there are some strong candidates from the Italian Church, but I would, my opinion would be that if someone is elected from Africa or South America or Latin America or the Philippines or the East or Germany, that no one's going to have a nosebleed over this. You know, that people are used to a non-Roman, and they're comfortable with that. And nobody's saying that there are not good candidates from Europe, but I do think that there should be an openness that whoever the cardinals choose, no matter what country he comes from, that the Church will support him, collaborate with him for the good of the Church and of the world. And I believe that what will happen if the man is from outside of Rome, one of the things that will happen is there'll be staff changes in Rome as he brings his own people in, just like any government.
Sure.
And to watch this whole scene over the next 6 months will be very interesting, to see where it's going, what it means, what implications it has for the Universal Church. And because this Pope was so much of a man of dialogue, I think it's going to be very, very important how they structure the continuance of this dialogue with the leaders of the world, because that can't stop.
Now, would one of the considerations be the strength of the Church in Spanish-speaking countries and the growing strength in places such as India and the Philippines and Africa and so on, where there's room for growth and so on? Yeah,
I think myself, I think it is. I think that the condition of the Church in Europe and in North America is that it is seriously secularized, and that is showing up in the Constitution of the European Union, for example. It's showing up in the attendance of people in ministry and in worship in Europe. A little better in North America, but North America usually will inherit what comes from Europe within a generation. Where the growth of the Church is strong, so presently the Church is about 1,326,000,000 people. Where the Church is growing and strong is in the Third World. Now, I think it's very, very important that whoever is elected Pope respects that, whether he's from Europe or from the Third World, and that the mechanisms of church government continue to be in dialogue with those people, because it's not so much a question of only serving them, it's a question of letting them have a participation in the formulation of how do we deal with the marginalized, with the poor, with the people who are not yet in the international power circles.
Now, you said something that was interesting. You said that in Europe, more and more the societies, the systems of government are becoming more secular, more and more secular. Does that mean that you think that the church, not necessarily the Catholic Church, but church and religion should have a greater role to play in tandem with development and with government?
Well, I do, because I don't think that the churches should sit still with a position of having people privatize religion. See, I believe religion is important because it's where the values of most people come from. For example, internationally we are dealing with a society that is struggling with values. All right, now when you try to analyze that pastorally, where did it come from? Where did we come from to get to a valueless society? And the answer to that is that people have distanced themselves from the religious basis of all religious traditions over the last 2 generations. And now they can honestly say, I'm not sure what to do.
But how then does that impact? Take, for example, the argument about the 10 Commandments being displayed on government institutions in the States. If I am Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or Jain or anything like that, non-Christian, and I am to face a judicial system where the tenets of another religion is being embraced and therefore I think imposed upon me facing this system, how then do you deal with things like that?
Well, I think you have to understand that in that instance, the one you just gave, the 10 Commandments are a symbol of the Judeo-Christian tradition. They are a symbol of values are rooted in God. I think that's as far as you can go with it. I don't think you can say in any of the court decisions over the last 50 years that there has been any kind of an attempt to impose on non-Jewish Christian tradition people the values of the Jewish Christian tradition. I think, if anything, you can say that the courts, now your example was North America, the courts in North America have certainly been more secular than religious. And I do believe that even the contemporary pressures on the Patriot Act in the United States coming from the courts are that Muslim prisoners and people who are in that religious category, most of whom would be Muslims because that's where the war was, they have to have the rights of anybody else. And I think that's an important point. So I would...
But does it go to religion, Archbishop? I mean, whether you take someone from Brazil, Iraq, Afghanistan, Australia, and put them in a camp outside of your legal borders and detain them and do with them as you please because you say that they don't fall under your judicial system. Is religion the consideration, or is it just that this is a human being and should be entitled to the same rights and privileges that any other human being under the protection or jurisdiction of that form of government should be?
I would say that the role of religion there is to put pressure on the government that human rights be respected right across the board. And I think that the Bishops' Conference in the United States has done that, that they have, through their legal department, challenged that practice that you just mentioned. And it formally And I do think it's one thing that the religious traditions of the nation can do something about, if they themselves are not fundamentalistic. I believe, and I'm willing to say this on tape, I believe that one of the dangers on the globe right now is fundamentalism. And much of it isn't religious, even though it's in religious garb. It's fundamentalism, and whether it's religious or secular or political, you can't deal with the fundamentalists. They have an agenda that they won't move off. They just can't do it. And we can't let them have the forum.
Do you think there's a contradiction of sorts within some religious bodies, in that there's a need for everyone to come together, the religious bodies to come together to deal with government and to deal with certain issues, but at the same time some religious bodies, such as Catholicism, such as the Catholic Church, would actively seek to convert or to bring members into the fold?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's two aspects on that. It's a good question. Number one, every religion should believe that they're the true religion, and be based on that, they should be inviting other people to join, because they feel they have the fullness of the truth. Now, when the Holy See came out with the document Dominus Jesus a few years back, one of the reactions, I wasn't here yet, one of the reactions was the Muslim community came out in support of the document, because they said, that's what we believe. We believe we are the one true faith. I'm sure the Hindus believe the same thing. And not logically, they should be able to invite other people in to join them. The other dimension of that tension is that there are divisions within the religions themselves, not just conservative liberal, but I have noticed even in the IRO that a Hindu faith will have different views on issues, and that gets to be a problem for governments. Which voice do you listen to?
Sure.
See, if you had a unified voice, it's relatively easy. Even if you have to say, I don't agree with it, at least you can hear one voice. But when you hear 15 voices coming out of the same tradition, what can you do?
But that happens in almost every religious body, does it not?
It happens, but it depends upon the size of the divisions, I think that...
We'll take the Anglican Church, for example. It might well split before the end of the year.
Yes, well,
a whole another religion.
That is... the internet reports that I got in late February was that the Anglican Communion has asked the Canadian American Church to leave.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what that means formally, because I don't know the Anglican structure, but I do know that Bishop S. has a concern, it was in his last paper, that there's going to be a division.
Now, one of the things that people consider in the new Pope is that the cardinals who will select him were almost all chosen by Pope John Paul II.
114 out of the 117 have been chosen by John Paul.
So one would presume that the person who is selected will be more or less in line with this person's ideas and vision for the church, would be more or less a continuation of the previous popes. Do you think that there's a possibility that we might all be surprised?
Well, I mean, you always have to be ready for surprises, but one of the things that I have said many times in interviews is you're never going to have Santa Claus elected Pope. Whoever comes out of the College of Cardinals as the Pope is going to be someone who is consistent with the scriptures and tradition of the Catholic Church. Having said that, John the 23rd, who was in the diplomatic corps, came out of the College of Cardinals as a transition Pope. He surprised everybody. And this is the reason why the Catholic Church has been in such flux over the last 30 years, and it has led to a level of visibility that is unheard of in the Church. So I do believe that there is the possibility of surprise, but it won't be surprise in the sense that there's going to be 8 sacraments rather than 7, or there's going to be 4 persons in God rather than 3. There'll be a consistency of doctrine and ethics. There will be a consistency of the many of the elements of this Pope's legacy. However, everybody has his own personality. I'll give you an example. When I first got here, They asked me, how am I going to fill Archbishop Panton's shoes? I says, I'm not going to fill his shoes. I walk around on my own. And that surprised the reporter.
Sure.
But I have lived on that, and I would expect whoever the next pope is, he'll walk around in his own shoes.
Now, it begs a question.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier that the next pope has to be cognizant of the fact that the church is strongest in the developing world, or getting stronger in the developing world.
Mm-hmm.
The problems of the developing world are tremendous. One of the big problems is the spread of HIV/AIDS, burgeoning populations in some countries, and yet the church advocates no contraception.
Yes.
Some people feel that is a terrible conflict because the church has the power, they feel, in some instances, to help prevent the spread of HIV/AIDS and other sexually transmitted infections. But yet, by saying no contraceptives and abstinence is not working at this point.
In Uganda, it's working very well.
But it's a combined campaign. It's not
Yes.
just an abstinence campaign. It's part of the campaign. It's a multi-pronged campaign. And they feel that by doing that, one is leaving the sheep to the wolves, so to speak.
Well, I like to answer that thing not answer it, but respond to it on two levels. Number one, the question of contraceptives is I believe in many ways a false question, because if you look at the sexual behavior of the world in terms of fornication, adultery, homosexual sex, group sex, sadomasochistic sex, nobody involved in those activities are worried about the teaching of the church. Nobody. They're doing what they want. Why are
I'm sure many people who are involved in those activities would beg to differ.
Well, they would beg to differ in the sense that they may have regrets for what they've done or are doing, but they continue it. They continue to do it. I believe that the church on that point is in the same position as the medical community that's saying to people, you can't continue this behavior and expect to live, but they continue the behavior. People have developed, in the name of freedom, a willingness to do what they want.
But man is fallible. Is that accepted?
Certainly,
right?
absolutely.
And that's why in the Catholic Church, among other things, you have confession.
That's right.
And that's why, according to your doctrine, Jesus came to earth is to take away some of the
Take away
sins.
sins for people who have a purpose of amendment.
Right. So what someone might do at age 20 or at age 25 or even at age 55, they may repent for, and according to the doctrines of the church,
hopefully they would
be forgiven.
But the reason why they would repent is they eventually get to the point where they accept the teaching of the church as true, and they accept it for their own life. And that's why the church doesn't move off the tradition.
Do you think that if church, and this doesn't just apply to the Catholic Church, but do you think if religion becomes more relevant and seems like it is actually for me, and me being younger people generally, that its influence will grow, and then campaigns such as abstinence and so on will have more strength once you're actually more entrenched in these communities?
I believe the second part of what you said is true, that the pastoral outreach to people so that they see this, for me, this whatever the doctrine is applicable to my life, and I see it as a good thing. I think that's true. I think the front end of it is that if you change your policies to become relevant, eventually you become irrelevant because you have stood for nothing. You have said, under pressure, we're going to change our teaching. However, one of the reasons we think that the church has grown under John Paul II, and one of the reasons why there is so much respect and trust for this man is because he never paid attention to polls. The question was the truth and the wisdom of God. That's what he operated on, that's what he proclaimed. And I think that if any church or any religious tradition moves off what they consider their foundation documents, there's nothing like it.
Gilbert, we could go on and on. I'm
Yes.
certainly enjoying this, but we've run out of time. Thanks for
Okay.
joining us right here on One on One. It's been a pleasure.
Happy to.
Archbishop of Port of Spain, Edward Gilbert, has been speaking with us right here on One on One. I'm Nirad Tiwari. Enjoy the rest of your evening and stay with IETV. Take care.